And so next, what he does, he says, so far we have an account of the first term in the divine command theory, namely the morally right and wrong. So he's kind of dealt with now this idea of what's morally right and wrong, what that means and how that works, right? And so he says the second term is divine command. And he says the purpose of commands is for the speaker to effect change in the world through the expression of her will. So why does a person give a command? Well, because they want to change the world through the expression of their will, right? And so he says it's useful to distinguish, as the Christian scholastics did, between five kinds of divine prescription, though he tells us this should not be taken as an exhaustive list. So he's going to give us five kinds of prescriptions, of commands that God can give, types of commands, we might say. So, for instance, he says God gives precepts, prohibitions, permissions, counsels, and directly affected commands. So those are the five kinds of prescriptions that he wants us to be aware of as he works his way through his theory.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as parents, all these things should start sounding familiar with this. This doesn't have to be a full in the sky type understanding. So, when we command our children to eat their food, or they can't get dessert is definitely one kind, or absolutely not. You can't have dessert before dinner, or what do you think eating dessert before the meal would get you? Let's come and reason together with this, and if you do well, then you will get dessert. So all these things, it doesn't have to be so complicated, even if we use Kantian's model here. All right, so he goes on to say then that both precepts and prohibitions create obligations, and that's a very important point that is kind of out there these days, especially when we're talking about rights. And I was just listening to a podcast where people were discussing ancient politics and how we as Americans think of things in the terms of rights, things that I have as liberty because God grants them to me, or the state doesn't prohibit them. But in Greek and Roman culture, your obligations, your permissions and prohibitions are to make you a good citizen, a citizen in a legal sense there. And so you have obligations because of your what we would call rights. And so this is something that has changed in kind of our understanding of politics and kind of people's relationship to each other in the state, depending on the type of world you were born into. So both precepts and prohibitions create obligations. They are issued with authority, and some kind of sanction is envisioned for noncompliance. And just think about how contracts are written. I will do this, and you will do this. If any time the line A is crossed, then the contract becomes null and void, and I'm paid so much amount. Or if you don't want to fulfill your obligations for this, here are the penalties that you're subjected to. Everyone signs on the dotted line, and therefore you have an agreement. Again, going back to the Kantian models of promise making. And so here it's no different within the moral framework of should I run the person over in the middle of the street is maybe a different concept, but within the same mindset. So there's noncompliance, and it's ranging from blame to punishment. The notion of authority here needs some explanation.